I've been reading through the book of Daniel, and chapter after chapter, this theme just keeps coming up. And it's this idea that God is able to preserve and protect and rescue and deliver his people who are faithful even in the midst of dangerous and undesirable situations. You see this over and over. And I wanted to remind you of this today because given our current cultural climate and political climate and with everything that's going on in our nation now, we just need to be reminded that we can trust this God and that we need to be faithful to this God because such faithfulness doesn't disappoint. I want us to be able to conclude with King Darius in chapter 6, verses 26 and 27. He says, "I make a decree that in all my royal dominion people are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions." That the same God who saved Daniel from the power of the lions is able and willing to save us in our faithfulness to him. So you remember that the reason Daniel's in this situation in the first place is because of his faithfulness to God. These other guys got jealous of him, and so they tricked the king into making this edict that would endanger Daniel and cause him to be thrown into this den of lions. The king fell for it, and against his own will, he does this to Daniel. You see this in verse 16. "Then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions. The king declared to Daniel, 'May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you.'" See, the king recognized that Daniel was faithful. He served God continually, unceasing in his service to God. This is who Daniel was, and because of his faithfulness to God, God shuts the lion's mouth, and he preserves Daniel. This isn't the first time he's preserved his people in the face of danger, even in the book of Daniel. If you remember Daniel 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to bow the knee to the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, right? They did not want to break the first and the second commandment. They were going to be faithful to God, and their faithfulness put them in this situation where they were thrown into a fiery furnace. And yet what happens? This is amazing. Chapter 3, verse 27. "And the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not any power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their heads was not singed, their cloaks were not harmed, and no smell of fire had come upon them." That's incredible. That their clothes had no sign of being marred by the flames, their hair wasn't singed. You couldn't even smell smoke on them. Like, you can hardly get around a campfire or the grill without having some smell of fire on you. They were in the fire, and God preserved them. And it's incredible. There are other places here when Daniel interprets the dream of Nebuchadnezzar after Nebuchadnezzar threatens to kill all of his magicians, the Chaldeans, the wise men, for not even being able to tell him his dream, much less the interpretation. When the king forces the exiles to eat his diet, and Daniel and some others stand out and they say, "No, we're not going to defile ourselves with your food. We're going to serve our God continually, continue to eat as is of our custom and laws. So again, you just read through Daniel about the faithfulness of his people and how God comes through for them continually. He preserves them in danger. And so I just wanted to remind you of that we can be faithful even in the face of danger. It is not without its reward, and that God is good. He takes care of us, and we can trust him.